Hi, I'm Dave Madsen. On March 12th, KTIV held a very special event at the Sioux City Community Theater, a tribute to Jim Henry, 50 years of Siouxland TV. We videotaped that event, and here are some of the highlights of that program.
Hi, boys and girls. Hi, boys and girls.
A familiar greeting in Siouxland for more than 30 years from a familiar face. Jim Henry is the Canyon Kid, welcoming viewers to his children's show at KTIV-TV, now KCAU. The show started only days after the station went on the air in 1953. When management couldn't find a retired type to host, they turned to Jim.
Somebody said, well, maybe, what about you? Would you be interested in doing it? And I thought, why not? And so I went home and made up a show.
And Canyon Kid was born. Jim says he chose a Western costume because it was simple and inexpensive. But he soon realized he had to come up with a reason for the Canyon Kid name.
It's not from the canyons out in the west and from that kind of scene. It's from the buildings in New York City that form canyons, the tall buildings. And these people seem to go for that, believe that, I guess. But actually, in a way, it was true.
The show worked despite Jim's Brooklyn accent.
And I thought, this is crazy what you're doing here, but nobody has said anything yet. I mean, nobody said, wait a minute, another good guy. This is Susan Kenyon.
For several years, the show included about 20 children who would perform, show works of art, or answer questions. An estimated 70,000 children appeared on the program. His half-hour show aired daily for most of its run.
It never seemed like a lot of work to me.
The show usually went well, but in the days when it was live, things could go awry. Like the time he was doing an advertisement demonstrating the easy-to-use cartons that were replacing milk bottles.
I'm showing this new carton, and I've never opened it before, and I couldn't get it open. Look at this little
Pet Day on the program was usually memorable. None more than the time when Jim was on vacation and Gene Sherman was the guest host.
Somebody's raccoon ate somebody's turtle.
Despite a few minor mishaps, the program flourished. While Jim never preached, he did end each show with a gentle reminder.
And be kind to one another. Bye now. You want to wait?
Bye.
In addition to hosting the children's show, Jim also became entertainment editor, meeting some of Hollywood's brightest stars and showing off his quick wit.
We're talking today to a great actor, Carl Malden. I wanted to show you a picture I had in my billfold, Carl. Oh, my. I think somebody stole my billfold.
You mean Key Case did? In hotel? No. Those days are over. I'm a detective
But
now.
I had my express checks, and I know
You did.
about
Good.
that.
Always travel with American Express.
But it was as Canyon Kid that Jim became best known. People still stop and tell him how much they enjoyed the show. Jim says he doesn't mind, even when it dates him.
Now, what's interesting to me is talking to adults who are 40 years old or 50 years old who will stop me and talk to me because they were on the show. And I just think it's wonderful.
When the lights went out on Jim's children's show at Channel 9 in 1985, they came on here at Channel 4 only a few years later when he became host of Around Siouxland, a job he still loves.
It's fun to do, and I've met a lot of people.
A lot of people over a lot of years, a half-century of broadcasting, a feat that even takes Jim aback.
I mean, wow, 50 years.
We do know, we agree.
Thank you for being with us today, and...
No, thank you, Jim. The honor's been ours. In Sioux City, Pat Mack, KTIV News Channel 4.
50 years in broadcasting. And we're actually going to let's talk a little bit, even more than 50 years, actually, because we want to talk about how you actually originally came to Sioux City. Now, you began, the way you first found out about Sioux City is because you were going to come here for training. Talk about that, in the Air Force.
I came here with about 20 other volunteers. We got off the train on the end of Nebraska Street, and it was a hot afternoon. and it was windy. I could feel grit in my, and it's been windy ever since. I thought that was the first thing I'm not going to like about this town, and that was the wind, and it's always is. Always reminds me, you know, there's an old joke about Chicago that it stopped blowing, the wind stopped blowing, everybody fell over.
So you were stationed here to train with the, I mean, you actually had gone to school, but then you were putting your unit together.
That's right.
Your crew for the airplane. And then you went overseas. Tell us a little bit about what you did when you were overseas. You were in the European theater.
Right, and so did, we stayed, our base was in, there were airfields all over England. And Lebanon, that was the name of the town that we were stationed in Lebanon, Bury, St. Edmunds. And V-17s, you would do, supposed to do 35 missions. And the pilot went up with other crews to start with, to get familiar with that. And you would probably fly 2 or 3 missions a week. And you get up early in the morning, and get briefed about where you were going and how you were going to get there. And then when you took off, it took quite a while for hundreds of B-17s to form over England before they started over there. Of course, there was wave after wave of B-17s. And I've always thought, after it was all over, that I'm glad I was in the Air Force. It was dangerous flying, I suppose. But the real danger was over the target, which was only a few minutes. I mean, and planes would be blown out of the sky, and you just considered yourself lucky that day. But when you got home that night, when you got home that night, you went and you had dinner at the officers club, and then you were in the, maybe had a drink or two before you went to bed in the hut that was warm in the wintertime. And I thought it should be, and I really respect all of the guys that are on the ground that get shot at all the time and have to crawl through the mud and everything. So I thought it was easy. But, you know, for my tour was, I met co-pilot, Gary Davis, his name was. And Gary Davis was a chorus boy on Broadway, and understudy Danny Kaye. And his father was, Maya Davis had an orchestra in Washington. If you were going to have any kind of major event in Washington, D.C., you had Maya Davis for the orchestra. So Gary, wherever we went, had skits and things that he wanted to do. He wanted to entertain the troops. So whatever base we went to, which was 3 different times, that it was within 3 different bases. And he needed somebody like a second banana, I understood, and I thought, well, I would like to do that. So we did little skits together.
So that was kind of your first show business thing.
That's the first time I performed at all, except in front of the family when I was 6 years old. Actually, that's right. That's the first time. I was never on the stage. I was never taking drama or anything like that.
Talk about when the war was done and you, for some reason, decided to come back to Sioux City. Why did you decide to come back?
I had met a girl while I was stationed here, and when I got back from overseas, it was too far to commute from New York to Sioux City, so we got married. And at one point, her father, who was he was operating jukeboxes and pinball machines, and thought he'd go into business for himself, and invited me out to be a partner, thinking that I could get a GI loan and buy jukeboxes and pinball machines. So we came out and found out that the banks really were not interested in putting out loans for jukeboxes and pinball machines. There was, well, we just had so many parties before we left Brooklyn that we didn't want to go. I mean, there was even a "we're glad Henry's gone" party after we left, that we didn't really want to leave and go back home again. So I got a job at Weatherwax at that point.
A clothing store.
Which I thought, let me do this until I figure out what I'm going to do. And then there was something in the paper that said something about starting a community theater. And I thought, I think I would like that. So you had to go to the Board of Education building because the Parks and Recreation Department were with the people that were starting the little theater business. And so I went down and I looked in at people and I thought, nobody here that looks to me like that I can't do what they're doing. And so I tried out for a part
In the first show.
in the first show, which was the late Christopher Bean. I've never heard of that show ever since then. I don't know
What you did to that show. We should mention we are at the Sioux City Community Theater now in Riverside on the old Shore Acres Theater. And thanks very much to the Community Theater for allowing us to be here tonight for this little event. You worked with Jim in some of the early years of the Community Theater.
Yes.
What kind of stories can you tell us about that?
Well, I met Jim 35 years ago, I think it was. He auditioned for a play I was directing, the first show I ever directed out here, because it was the second year that I moved here. And he and his lovely wife auditioned for it, and I was just thrilled. I thought, who is that cute little guy? And
I love you.
The problem was that they had a young child, and they just didn't really feel that they could afford a babysitter every night for 6 weeks to come out here and do a show. So I said, bring the boy. So it may have been the only show that was ever done out here where Karen walked around all night frequently with a little baby on her back, you know. And we had 2 babysitters listed in the program who took care of him all throughout the show. We had a baby bed out here, the whole works. And I'm so glad we did.
Hi, boys and girls.
Tell me about the beginnings of television. How did that happen? How did somebody say, you know, there's going to be this thing called television?
I knew some people that were involved in starting a station, and they were looking for, they asked me because they knew I was familiar with the theater, and they asked me if I knew anybody, any older gentleman that was retired and would like to do a children's show. And I think that at that time, the big children's show person that people remembered was the Uncle Don on a radio, and I think that's what they were thinking about. And every so often, I'd say, there isn't anybody, and then somebody would ask, and I said, no, there's nobody that I know. And one day, one of these men said, well, maybe you could do it. Well, what do you think? And I thought, you know, they're just starting television, and I don't think they know any more than I know about this thing. So I said, yeah, I can do this.
That seems to be a theme in your life. You know?
And so I went home and made up a show. And the reason it's Canyon Kids Corner is because I wanted to have a clubhouse. Because when I was a kid, I wanted a clubhouse. And I would be like the president of the club and and as well as my clubhouse. So I said, now, but you have a costume if you're going to do this. And the least expensive costume and the easiest to come by was a cowboy thing. And that was worked for me because I grew up, that was a big thing when I was a kid, man. The big heroes were cowboy heroes. Buck Jones and Ken Maynard, Hoot Gibson. So I got tie, and I put on a string tie and a Western hat, which I had on for probably, I can't remember, but it might have been a month. And I thought, this is not me. This is just not me. So I took the tie off and the hat off, and I was okay. And it was, and boots, I had boots too. I had boots.
You interviewed some famous people on that show because they'd come through the area. You mentioned Hoot Gibson.
First, the person I interviewed was Hoot Gibson, which gave me really a big kick because, well, he was in the twilight of his career when I was young, actually, but just to have him there and you know, to meet Hoot Gibson, I thought, wow, I'm in a big time. And there were other people. There wasn't another show that you could interview anybody on at that time. And so I knew the owner of the Flamingo, and I would know he would tell me who was coming, and he booked named entertainers for a weekend or for maybe a week sometimes. And Jimmy Dean was one of the people that I interviewed. Julius Rosa, who used to sing for Arthur Godfrey, who I found lived in the same, next to my neighbor, in the neighborhood next to my neighborhood, back in Brooklyn. And the first thing you know, we were talking about Brooklyn, and it dawned on me, I thought, who cares? Just he and I. Where did you go to school? Yeah, oh, wow, yeah, oh, that kind of thing.
We had a picture of you interviewing Jerry Mathers from Leave It to
Oh,
Beaver.
yes, right, yes, that was early on, yes, also, that's him.
Tell us the story about when you forgot to introduce Santa Claus.
There was at that time you could do like a 15-minute commercial, and call it.
Don't let that get out.
And call it a show. And there was Santa Claus had a workshop with toys, and naturally, and would do this show at Christmas time, just up until Christmas, and I was on the Christmas Eve show. I asked Santa Claus if he would be on my show, and he said sure. And so I said okay, but I don't want you to come in till near the end of the show because once you're there, that'll change whatever we're doing. And so why didn't you? There was a flag as you came in the door, and I said, why don't you stay there when you come in the door just until I say, hey, here comes Santa Claus. And my daughter, Susie, and my son, Alan, were there. They were maybe 9, 10 years old, something like that. It was that old. And Susie sang a song. She could sing. She pretty good, actually. And Alan, I don't know, I can't remember. He did something, and I did the night before Christmas. And I could do a really good night before Christmas. And the show was, I just thought the show was really great. And we were walking out of the studio, the 2 kids and I, and as we passed the flag, I heard somebody say, Jim, when am I on? And I thought, oh my God, I forgot Santa Claus.
I'd like to introduce a friend who worked with Jim on the Canyon Kids. Don, would you come down? This is Don Reese, who worked on the production staff at the time. Now you got to see the difference.
I want to show you how big this guy is.
Take a picture, you won't get to see it again.
Have a seat, Don. You were on the production staff.
Right.
At a time doing Canyon Kids Corner. What was your job?
Well, I first worked on a show as a cameraman for a while, but then when I moved to the film department, about that time, the job of the old timer came open. So I was the old timer for about 2 years, I think. Yeah. And
it was about 2 years.
yeah. Seemed longer, didn't it? Yes. But what I remember about that was the first few shows because it looks really easy when you watch it. So I get back and I'm tall, so I'm going to cram behind that little set. And I've got my arm up there, and you got to watch what you say because the mic's always on. And and I couldn't get the voice down. It was really gravelly. It was just creepy at first. It wasn't really funny or cute at all. It was just creepy. You know, I should have been doing voiceovers for, you know, Son of Thrill Theater or something. And then I couldn't get the hang of the lip sync and it looked like a Godzilla movie. It was always about 2 seconds off constantly, you know. And I remember, here's what I remember about one of the early shows. I was so nervous, like just getting through the show. And we got to the end of the show. I was back, and Rod Bergeson was playing Sam the Servant. So we're back there, and we're almost at the end of the show. We're in the home stretch, and you said, well, it's time to go. Well, wave goodbye to the boys and girls. And if you remember the old timer, the only thing I could really control was his mouth. The arms just kind of dangled there. They just, you know. So right at the end of the show, you said, old timer, would you like to wave goodbye to the boys and girls? And I got panicked. I went, I can't, Kenny, my arms don't work. And I'm looking at Rod, and Rod's trying not to laugh. He's just rolling his eyes like, you idiot. I'll never... He was so nice to the credits, like, what? I'm sorry, I panicked. I didn't know what to do.
I used to laugh at things that he said as the old-timer off camera.
Yeah.
Old-timer was naughty sometimes.
Sometimes.
and I'm thinking if he was funny then. Now, I don't know if you know, but some of you, I'm sure, know that Don Reese is a working, successful comedian. Goes
Successful's debatable.
In town every so often, and so he's still being funny. When I met him, he's funny. He's still funny.
Just in case there's some folks who don't remember what Canyon Kid was all about, we've got just a short little videotape from early shows of Canyon Kids Corner.
It's time now for Canyon Kids Corner.
Hi, boys and girls. I'll bet this is a happy Sunday for you, huh? I bet you got lots of stuff to do right now. Playing with all the toys and all the things that you got yesterday. I have a present in the mailbox here. Look at that. We opened the mailbox, and look at what we found here. Isn't that cute? I wonder if some of you boys and girls got a pet for Christmas. Did you get a puppy or a kitty cat or a chipmunk or something like that? Well, we're going to find out about what you ought to do with them if you did get one and how you ought to take care of it. First, of course, Sam is... Hello there.
Hello, Kenyon.
Hi there.
Hey, Kenyon.
Say it was a nice day. You had a nice Christmas yesterday? Did you have a nice
sure
Christmas?
did.
I'm glad to hear that.
You know what Sam got me?
What did Sam get
He got me a new suit.
Yeah.
A new suit?
Yeah, but it had to go back for alteration. Say, Kenyon, you know,
Yes.
we gave you your gifts yesterday, and we saved one for now to give you on the show. And yeah, Sam's got it right here.
Sam's got the gift right here?
Yeah.
And I'm going to... I don't know about
listen.
this. Let me see here.
Yeah.
What is this? This is no joke. What? Look at that. That's a Canyon Kid
It looks
watch.
like you.
Yeah.
How about that?
I'll be a son of a gun. Thank you. Well, thank you very much. Oh, so goodbye, and we'll see you next Sunday at noon. Be kind.
Bye, boys.
Hi, boys and girls.
We've got some very special guests with us now over here in Kids Corner. These are folks who have some fun stories to share with us about the time when they were on Canyon Kids Corner a year or two ago. I'm going to ask each of you to stand as I come to you. Would you stand up, Julie? Tell everybody who you are and why people might recognize you.
Well, Jim would know me best as Julie White. I worked for him for years, with him for years at KCAU-TV. So we sat at the anchor desk together. But my first meeting with Jim went way back, and I think a year, because I'm not quite sure, but probably around 1968. And I was on Canyon Kids Corner with my pet on pet day, and he had to ask me to leave because my little dog got in a fight. And I'm sure I was going to win first prize, but he did, I suppose, kindly ask me to leave, and then my brother won first prize. So later years, when I sat by Jim at the anchor desk at KCAU, I would tease him that I was probably going to embarrass him sometime too when we were sitting there together just to get even.
Thanks, Julie. Pat, would you stand up?
Yes, I will.
Pat, I'm gonna read a letter. In fact, hold on to this just for a second. Let me get your letter. Hold on, because I want people to hear this.
You want me to sing a little bit?
No.
Got your guitar?
I'm gonna read the letter that we got from Pat. I've been a commercial artist here in Sioux City for over 20 years. I started out as an outdoor billboard artist, then 10 years ago took my art to the computer as a graphic designer at the Sioux City Journal Shopper's Guide. I owe a lot of people for the encouragement to be the best artist I could be, beginning at a very young age, and every time I see Jim Henry on the streets, I never fail to make a point to greet him because he's the one who encouraged me without even knowing it. Back in the mid to late 50s, Canyon Kid always had an art contest on his program. I would enter quite often, and a few times I even won. I would win a pair of shoes for my endeavor.
Yeah, Buster Brown.
Buster Brown's. That was a thrill since I needed shoes, it seemed, every time I entered the contest. One time I remember a big art contest. Siouxland's child artists had to draw and color a picture of the Lone Ranger and win a toboggan. I won that contest and was able to get my brothers to come on the show with me, and we were presented with the toboggan. That's one of my first memories of competing as an accomplished artist. Wasn't that a nice story? Some of you may recognize Gene Sherman, who's from down at the convention center. Gene, tell us about the story when you won some shoes also on Canyon Kid.
Okay, well, 1960, first grader and over by Bronson, Iowa, and we were just dirt poor. I never had a new pair of shoes ever in my life. And so I drew a little bunny and sent it in and won a pair of white Easter shoes with little bows on it. It was the best day of my life. 2 years later, we moved to town, and my brownie troupe was going to come on, and we had a big snowstorm. And so I was late getting my ride, and I ran 14 blocks downtown asking everyone where the TV station was, and bawling and falling down and needing to go to the bathroom, whatever. And so this little bawling child comes in just to get in under the wire as the show started. And I just wanted to meet Canyon Kid and shake his hand and say thank you for my shoes. And he had so many cancellations that day that we never did get to go on. So 40 years later, I met him at the convention center, and I told him who I was. And we always, you're just such an icon, and what a wonderful person you are in all of our memories of Siouxland children, and what wonderful memories we have of your show and the special blessings of the gifts that you gave to us with our winning our art prizes and so forth. So thank you, Canyon Kid. We love you.
Thanks, Steve. Tell us your name.
Ray Woods.
And Ray, you're from Pearson, Iowa.
Yes, I am.
And you came down tonight because you wanted to tell us a story about the time you won the Soapbox Derby.
You bet I do.
And got to be on Canyon Kid's Corner.
Yes, it was really something for a 13-year-old kid from a little town like Pearson, Iowa, to be invited by Jim Henry to be on his Canyon Kids Corner. But when the show opened, I remember there was a tape across the studio, and we had taken my car, and somebody acquired another car, and I don't know who. Anyway, well, there was 2 race cars in the studio, so the show opened with the tape in view, and then the 2 race cars come from off camera toward the tape, and of course my car won, you know, being the champion in Sioux City. So Jim Henry come in second place, and he was in the other car. And I thought it was amazing at the time, you know, these cars are homemade, and they make them to fit you. And a 13-year-old kid isn't very big, and he just fit right in that other car, just like he was built for it. But, you know, it's exciting to be a celebrity in Sioux City, you know, to be a race winner. But it was just as exciting for the invitation to be on his show. It was really something for a 13-year-old kid. I'll never forget it, Jim.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
You set up Titter. Some of you may recognize Tim Bottaro. Tell us the story, Tim, about when you were on Canyon Kid.
Well, actually, I wasn't on Canyon Kid, but I think I am the oldest good guy that was ever on the show. If you remember, Canyon Kid would draw, he'd say, let's go to the old mailbag and we'll see who our good guy is. And the kids would write in and say why they were a good guy. And if you got selected, you'd get all of these prizes. Well, when I was 15 years old, a freshman at Heelan, I show up to school one day and people started razzing me about the fact, oh, Botero, what are you doing being a good guy? And I said, what? And at first I thought it was a joke, and then more and more people kept saying it. The letter was 5 years old. After a while, I finally said to my fellow students at Heelan, you know, you're making fun of me for being a good guy. What are you doing watching Canyon Kid? All these kids at Heelan went home from school and watched Canyon Kid. Well, we called the station and said, you better clean out the mailbag. And then I got all these certificates in the mail, and of course, you know, so I remember particularly going into Mr. Donut. You got a Texas donut. And I walked in with the certificate and handed it to him, and the guy looked at me and said, you're kind of big to be a good guy. And I had to tell the story like 5 times every time I went in. So, Canyon, I'm glad you took my advice. I think you cleaned out the mailbag, but 15 years old is a good guy talking about helping my mom do the dishes, carry out the garbage.
Thank you. And some of you may also recognize, step over here just a little bit, Janet Flanagan from St. Luke's. Tell us a story about being, were you on Canyon Kid at some point?
I was on Canyon Kid, and I always feel like I date myself a little bit, because that is a confession for a lot of people. I was...
Now, you know, his show was on until 1985, so you could have been on there, you know.
Okay, so I'm going to confess, it might have been 1960.
Okay.
All right, and I was maybe 2nd grade, and a friend of mine and I did the Irish jig at school on the stage. And so I think I saw Kids Corner as kind of a talent, you know, another rung up on the ladder. Maybe I was making it to the big time, because then we also appeared on Channel 9. Was it Channel 9? Yeah. So I'm getting the stations mixed up. Okay, so then I was on, and we did the Irish jig, and I had a green smock with white, and I remember distinctly, and I remember I made a mistake. But I survived. Jim never called me back to say, you know, talent search is looking for you or anything, and that was a very warm memory. But I have 2 other wonderful memories of Jim. When I was in college, so this is about 72, 73, I called up Bill Turner. I was scared to death, and I said, I want to work in a TV station. So I did. I worked at Channel 9 in summers. And I remember, and I was assigned in different departments, and I remember seeing Jim, and he was a VIP. And I remember visiting with him and seeing his office, and I was very in awe because he had lots of pictures of stars. So it's just a warm memory. And then a third wonderful memory is really sitting down with him on the couch at Channel 4 and visiting with him about upcoming Siouxland events. What a fabulous community service. And I have saluted Channel 4 and Jim for that forever. And actually, Jim, you may not know it, but when I was at Channel 9, I had to sub for you back when after I was an intern, I worked there a couple of years in the news department. So I had to do interviews, and I thought, hey, this can't be that hard. 3 minutes, you know, time, date, place, nice visit. And I got a guest on who was very quiet. And we just happened to have a consultant in watching the tape. I didn't do such a good job. So I also found out firsthand that there took a lot of talent, I think, to do the interviews Jim did. So, Jim, thank you for being a role model and a friend and a VIP for me when I was a starry-eyed youngster, and just for still doing a great job at Channel 4.
Thank you.
Later on, you became the entertainment editor at KCAU, and you got to do, I mean, you, of course, you did some movie reviews and those kinds of things, but probably one of the most fun things you got to do was take trips and interview stars.
It was great, yes.
Talk about that.
Well, before the season would start, usually in July or August, before the new television season would start, the ABC network would have invite people that did shows or did something that they had a show that they could talk about what the new shows were going to be. And so they would invite you out to interview the stars of all of the new, like you
probably interviewed 10 people over a weekend. And you would go out on Friday night, and they would tell you what was going to happen the next day. And at 8 o'clock the next morning, you had the first interview with about 10, 12 other people from other stations around the country. I will say that they never invited anybody that would be not easy to talk to. So most of the people you talked to were understood why they were there. And it was, and you worked till 5 o'clock that night, and you did the same on Sunday, and that was at a hotel, one different, mostly at the big fancy hotels, and in the gardens behind the hotels you would do this for the day. It was just grand. My mother's favorite actor was Robert Young, and I would send my mother pictures. And you know how mothers are. I would send her pictures that interviews that I was doing with like Robert Young, and my mother would say, "Oh, Jimmy, oh, you look so good there." "Oh, yeah, oh, I like that sweater, Jim." I said, "Mom, that's Robert Young." and everyone would always like how good you looked in that in the picture, and she never mentioned the person that you interviewed.
Hi, boys and girls.
Marvin Kline has been around Sioux City for a year or two, and
century or two.
And Marvin, you worked with Jim on this thing called the Press Club Gridiron, which was really kind of a talent show. Well, talent might be a big word for for what you did. Tell us about working on the Gridiron.
Well, Jim directed most of these shows. In fact, I had some of the old programs here, and I was asked to do the music and the takeoffs and so forth. And I have a picture here, Jim, you may remember, that shows me playing the piano, and you're lying on top of the piano.
Yes.
And you always maintained that that picture showed that you were on top of everything. And I always maintained that you were lying down on the job. We had an awful lot of fun at that time, and one of the things I was looking for, and unfortunately I couldn't find it, we did a skit about the city council. I don't know if you remember this or not, Jim. We had 5 people coming in that represented the people on the city council. And we did this, the parody and the music of Send in the Clowns. And I think that was one of the highlights that we had at that show.
You know what? It was great, and we got somebody who was not a member of the Diana Woolley to sing the song, because I said, "What a beautiful song that is, and this is a great idea." And Marvin wrote the parodies, and they're great parodies. They made the show, and Diana, I said, "Let's get somebody that can really sing the song." And so we asked her to do that, and she sang the song. Nobody laughed for a while, and the reason was she sang it so well they really weren't listening to the words. They just heard the music.
Exactly.
Yes, it was a big success, but actually.
And I have another revelation here that I don't think many people know this, but Jim Henry is Jewish. Because right here I have the Mount Sinai Review of 1951. And the cast includes, Lorraine Rosenthal, Francis Feinberg, Miriam Chaikin, Marcia Levine, and Jimmy Henry. And this is the program. And I want you to know that I made arrangements, Jimmy, on Friday night. You're going to be bar mitzvah.
And this tonight, and then the bar mitzvah.
While both of these folks are here, we're going to play a videotape for you from a friend of both of these folks, from Bill Turner.
Hi, this is Bill Turner, and I'm happy to greet all of my friends back in Sioux City and around the greater Siouxland area. I'd especially like to congratulate Jim Henry on his 50 years of great service to the public in the Siouxland area. Jim, I remember very, very well some of the early days over at Brand X, KTIV-TV, and then subsequently at KCAU-TV. Your contributions early on with Little Egypt and the Major Nine and all those things are remembered with great admiration. But more importantly, your excellent work for muscular dystrophy. Because of your work, Muscular Dystrophy is now a better organization, and it allowed me to be chosen as one of the 4 broadcasters around the country to meet with Jerry Lewis when we were trying to tweak the program early on. It was because of Jim Henry. Also the great admiration ABC had because of your interviews with the various talents throughout the country. So Jim, to you, to Karen, and to all the viewers here, congratulations and God bless you, and stay in good health. Bye-bye.
Hi, boys and girls.
Jim, you were at KCAU until 1985, and then, for various reasons, you left KCAU. And eventually, you came over to the good side and started working at KTIV. And you've been working with us doing the little around Siouxland interviews for a long time, and you've interviewed a lot of people. But one of the things that I've heard you say several times, you've even quoted in the newspaper, is, if somebody ever cancels on me, I can always call Esther May Cox.
Yes.
Esther May came along today. Thanks, Esther May, for stopping. You're with the Woodbury County Extension Service. You've done a lot of interviews. You've been on with Jim a lot of times. Any fun stories that you can think of?
Well, what happens in my office is the day I really bailed him out the best was he called. It was about 9:45. It was the morning they were doing the tapings.
It was 7:45.
Was it 9:45? Well, that's another time. Let me do the story first. Let me do this first. There's 2 of them.
The toughest time. Okay.
Yeah, right. This one was later in the morning, and it was a case of you needed something that had to come up that particular day or the very next day. So it wasn't a case of you could make it up somehow or other. Somebody didn't show. So he called, and I could tell in his voice it was not going well. And he said, how soon can you be here? And I said, well, it'll take me 20 minutes to drive from Morningside to the station. There's no way I can get there faster than 20 minutes. He said, okay, we'll be waiting for you. And they were. It was like, it's a wonder they didn't roll out in the parking lot to drag me in there. But it was a case of, and my staff said, so what are you going to talk about? I said, I don't know. Between here and there, I'll think of something. It doesn't really make any difference. He just needs somebody for 4 minutes. I could do 4 minutes. No problem.
So 4 years.
No problem. We've had good times.
Yes, we have.
We really are.
Okay.
And now it's at the place where he says, when you come, would you mind, we'll make 2 tapes. And he's taught me some of the lingo. And the second tape he calls, it's in the can. So it's so frustrating when somebody does have to cancel out, or I think that's not a very flattering term, in the can. But on the farm where I grew up, that wasn't a nice way to say things. But anyway, we make 2 tapes, and one of those he saves, or the station saves. So on a wintry day when people don't show up or there's a problem, they bring that one out. And we always know in our office when they are played, not because we're at home watching those at 12:30 or 12:25 in the middle of the day, but because we often offer something for free, or a bulletin, or an extra something or other, and people then start calling. The phone starts ringing at 12:30, 12:35, and the secretary looks at me and she said, "What did you do?" So we know he's watched, and we know that people in the community really appreciate the service. He's done lots for Siouxland in terms of helping us know what's going on, and promoted all sorts of activities and done lots of good. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Esther May, thanks very much.
Yes.
Hi, I'm Jim DeSchepper, Vice President and General Manager of KTIV. It's my pleasure to have worked with Jim for almost 10 years now. We're proud to have someone with his experience and expertise as part of the KTIV family. Our parent company, Quincy Newspapers Incorporated, is also proud and happy to have Jim as part of our KTIV family. Here's a message from our corporate Chief of Operations, Ralph Oakley.
Hi, I'm Ralph Oakley, the Vice President and Chief Operating Officer of Quincy Newspapers Incorporated, the owners of KTIV. You know, in the last 50 years, there have been some incredible changes in television, both behind the camera and in front of it. But with all the changes in 50 years, there's been one constant in Siouxland on television, and that's Jim Henry. For 50 years, Jim has been local television to Siouxland. He's done a great job. And on behalf of Tom Oakley, the president of QNI, myself, and the 800 employees of our company, we want to congratulate him on 50 years of local television. Jim, it's been a job well done.
As I thought about what I might say here tonight, I thought to myself, many of the people here and many of the people at home watching this on television probably watched kids shows when they were kids. I know I did. I didn't watch your program. I was in Minnesota. I watched another one. But it really was a wonderful thing for me because it taught me all kinds of things other than cartoons, but there was always all kinds of good things on there. You learned about the golden rule, you learned about safety, you learned about how to help other people. Those are all things that maybe television has lost a little bit of, and maybe if we work real hard before the clock ticks too far, we can gain some of that back, because even with around Siouxland, you're still doing those same kind of things. You're telling people about the things that are good to do and the things that help your community and the things that make you a good citizen. So maybe, like I say, in this high-tech world, we can maintain a little of that low-tech type of television and keep those wonderful things alive. And maybe we can continue to work with you for another 50 years, I guess.
I'm game.
All right.
Hi, boys and girls.
We've got with us now Karen Henry, who is Jim's wife of 37 years, they tell me. Jim, first of all, just tell us real quickly about, folks may not know about your family. I mean, of course, a lot of folks know Karen and your son Jason, but you have some other children also.
I have, yes, there were four, and the oldest was Alan Henry, and he died. That's why I'm involved with the Juvenile Diabetes Research Foundation, because of his death from diabetes. And then there's Susan, who lives in Laguna Niguel in California. Then there's Susie, that we've just spent some time with. I went to New York with Susie and her husband. They'd never been there before, and it was that kind of trip. In daylight theater, we went to 5 shows in 6 days. And then there's Brian, who lives up in Green Bay, and Julie, who also lives up in Green Bay. And Julie I have a grandchild, Molly. And then out in California, Alan's children. I have a grandson, Chris, who has a son, which is a great-grandson. Alan there were 2 other children that are grandchildren, Allison and Karen, who also live in California. Okay. And then there was Jason Henry.
There was Jason. We'll talk about Jason and Karen in just a second. Actually, we have a videotape from Jason.
Oh.
Let's play this. This is Jim's son, Jason.
And happy anniversary on your 50th year in TV. They wanted me to say a few words about what it was like to grow up in the house of a local celebrity. At the time, it didn't have a huge impact on me, as most boys my age were worried about trading baseball cards, building forts, and not letting that ground ball slip between my legs. But as I look back, I had a few more opportunities than probably the average kid in Sioux City did. I mean, how many kids could say that they got to run around with the 8 is Enough crew in California, or got to take their buddies on Canyon Kids Corner with Stretch Armstrong, or even sit in the press box the first time that KISS concert came to Sioux City. But you know, Dad, the most fun in growing up with a local celebrity has come at the expense of the famous movie Misery. To this day, when anyone comes and asks you for your autograph, you know Mom and I always rib you to determine who might be your next #1 fan. But in all seriousness, I'm very proud of what you've accomplished. From being a bombardier in World War II, to having the longest running local kids show in the United States, to now this 50th anniversary milestone. This is a great accomplishment. I'm sorry I couldn't be there tonight, but I send my wishes to both you and Mom and hope you both have a wonderful evening. Again, congratulations on your 50th anniversary in TV.
We had a chance to talk to another person. We did an interview with Karen. We had a lot of little secret things from here.
I chip off the old block.
There you go. Let's look at this interview that I had a chance to sit down with Karen for just a little bit.
Okay.
She told us a lot of fun things.
Oh. Well, let me see. How can I say that?
We worked well together because when we were doing this many years ago, he had certainly far more knowledge than I did, and he was very perceptive about things, and so it was easy kind of for me to follow the lead. I did learn a lot. I learned a lot about the business and you know, just by osmosis, television and the theater. And working with him he was very intense about what he was doing, very intense. Not a lot of jokes. I think his enthusiasm about everything is infectious. And I think when you talk to kids and you're genuinely interested in them, which he was, I just think that it's a good response, and so there's probably a really good rapport going on between, you know, the two of them. Well, one night we did go to the movies down on 4th Street. And we walked to our car, and when we walked to the car, this is one of Jim's favorite stories. This actually did happen. We walked to the car, and there happened to be a drunk man draped over the front of our car. And so Jim went to sit him upright, and I said, no, don't touch him, because I didn't know really if he was drunk. You know, I'm not quite as trusting as maybe he is about that. And so we decided to call the police. Well, we went into the adult entertainment theater, which was right there across from the other theater, and we wanted to tell the lady to call the police to help us out in this matter. And as we did go into the adult theater, which said nude movies, a car full of teenagers went by and went, wow, the Canyon Kid's going in to see dirty movies. And I ran out to the street and I said, no, you don't understand. See, there's this guy and he's draped over our hood, so this is what we want to do. So we went back in. As we came out, another load of people came by and said, wow, did you guys just see that? I want to see the review on that movie. And we went, no, I ran out again, and Jim is standing here, and I ran out in the street, and I don't know why I felt I had to explain my life, but I did. And I said, no, we didn't go to the dirty movies. We're waiting for the cops to come. Okay, so now the police do come. And we explained the situation. The guy was here, and Jim said, my wife won't let me move him, so we figured we better call the police. And the policeman said, okay, and so he writes down Jim's name, and he goes, oh. He said, were you just in that movie? What was it like? We died, and I said, no, you don't understand. And then I went through the whole story again. But I went through that story about 3 or 4 times that night because I just felt that everybody's saying, wow, what were they doing in there, the Canyon Kid? That's what bothered me, I guess, more than anything. It's phenomenal, the people that he knows, he has met, and who talk to him constantly. You know, you can't go to dinner without being interrupted. And of course, at this point, you know, that doesn't bother me because it's a wonderful thing that it's happened this long and that he has endured, you know, but when we were a family, that was a little bit harder for me to take simply because of Jason. There was not a private moment, I don't believe, when we were outside of our house. And I guess people might not really understand that. It's not because you don't want to talk to anybody. But there's never a private time outside of the house. I can remember when I had open heart surgery, and he was standing in the hall and people wanting him to sign autographs. And at the time, that's a little tough because you just want to talk to somebody and say, you know, hey, here I am, I made it, you know, but he's out there signing autographs. So
That part of it was hard as when we were a young family. Now it's not hard because you can just tell that people want to talk to him. I mean, it's very important that they talk to him and make connection, and it's nice that they still care that much. And so this is the part of his life that he should be enjoying out of all the fruits of his labor. So if he wants to do that or somebody wants to interrupt our dinner, that's fine.
My biggest critic, my most important critic, and my most important caretaker. She takes, for 37 years, she's there for me all the time. It's through all the things that I've done. Karen has been part of it one way or another. I'm proud of her. She's a very successful business lady. She's probably the best framer. She's the best in the Midwest, I'll tell you that. And art consultant. She was interim director at the Art Center while they were waiting for a director. So she's a very accomplished lady, and I love her very much. And every now and then somebody says, like, you know, what do you think you would do something? Would you rather be someplace else? Would you rather do something? Do you wish? Are there any mistakes that you made, or would you have done something different? And when I start saying, well, there are things that I might have done different, then I think, you know, if I did something different, if I would have went to college, I would be someplace else. If I was someplace else, I wouldn't have Karen, Jason, Susie, and Brian, and Julie. My life would be different. I wouldn't trade this life for another life at all. And to have what's going on here tonight with friends that I've known for years, and I might not have this, and I wouldn't pass this up for nothing.
Congratulations, Jim. Thank you very much for being a part of Siouxland for all these years.